There I am. Fantastic. So welcome. We've got quite a crowd today. Our attendance is much higher than, or our registrations, I should say, are much higher than last time, and lots of people signing in early. So welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the first in our new series, the Dynamic Duo. We're going to be starting really pretty much at the beginning of project management and taking a look at the whole concept of bringing in a business analyst. And for this, Jason Questar, who is an associate of ours with Achieve Blue Corporation, has agreed generously to lend his talents to our discussion today. So I'm looking forward to introducing you to Jason. As we get started today, your hosts today, myself, David Donaldson, and Jessica Burney, who's going to be helping us on the technical side. So if you do have any issues or concerns, please just pop a note into the chat or send Jessica an email, jessica.burney@tidalshift.ca, and we will definitely get back to you with those. Sorry, sound and technology, we're doing it over voice over IP, so we find sometimes that just at the beginning it's a little bit out of sync, and it usually takes care of itself. If you are having any issues, please just pop it in the chat. And as always, we are recording these sessions, so if any issues happen, just you can always catch the recording later. Okay, just to give you a quick some of the features that we have at the top. You can raise your hand. There's a bunch of icons there to choose whatever it is you need. You can hop into the chat window at any time, and as always, we accept applause. So for our session today, I'm going to open with a quote from Albert Einstein, and I think I actually might have used this one in one of my earlier webinars, but it was extremely applicable to what we're doing. So if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solution. And there's actually even a longer version of this quote where he continues on to say, even if my life depended upon it. And when we put this in a project management context, we're really solving a problem. So our projects, our customers come to us, they say, we have a problem, we need to solve this. And then the project or the deliverable of the project is the solution to that. If we apply Albert's wisdom here, we should be spending a lot more time thinking about what the problem is before we dive into solutioning that problem. And I think this is in part driven by our society, where we're constantly told, come to your boss with a solution, not the problem. And well, there's a lot of good wisdom in that. I think we really need to make sure that we've got the problem well defined before we launch. And we've had this discussion in other webinars, I know, and I just wanted to bring this back out as a positioning and reminder. Our projects start with the business need or the why, and really that's the problem that we're trying to solve. The product is the what of the solution, and the project is the how. And we need to make sure that those are in line with each other. Most projects tend to start in the how or the what, and we kind of reverse engineer the why. And really we should be starting with the why. We really need to have a good solid foundation of the reason why we're doing this. It will not only help us make sure we get the right what, but it'll also help us with ensuring that we stay on track. And really it's about hitting the target. And if we don't have our target well defined, if we hit the target and it's not well defined, well, we've kind of missed. And of course, if we've missed the target, well, that's a different conversation. But when we look at the target, and the quote here from George Santayana, a fanatic is one who redoubles his effort when he has forgotten his aim. And the target, the aim, it all goes back to the why. Why are we here to do this? So we're going to open up with a poll, and just want to get a feeling for the folks who are here today. And reopen. There we go. Poll's open. So if you could just do a quick vote. Oh, they're coming in fast and furious. Love it. Do you have dedicated business analysts on your project teams? And this can be in the form of, you bring them in for a specific project, or if you've got them like kind of on staff and the ready, and just want to get a feel for kind of how that is. Okay, so we've got about 2/3 of our population voted so far. We'll give them a few more seconds. All right. Oh, a few more coming in. going to broadcast the results here. So this is an interesting result. I wasn't expecting this. I was expecting more no's, to be honest. So 2/3 are saying yes, they do have a dedicated business analyst on their project teams, and 1/3 are saying no. So really happy to hear that, because I think it's a good, important place to be. It's a good, important resource to have. So it's very encouraging that the population we've got here today, at least, has a good number of those. So I'm just going to move straight into our next question, and got to switch. There we go. In your opinion, what is the role of the business analyst? And part of what we want to do today is dispel some myths around what the business analyst does. So you just want to get a bit of a feel for what people are thinking. What does a business analyst do? Yeah, okay, so let's take a look at some of these results we're getting in Fast and Furious here, starting at the top. Requirements gathering, requirements accountability, totally agree. Your business analyst, I think the key word here is business. And solution design, requirements gathering, absolutely. Supporting the requirements, we're seeing that on multiple times. Helping them find the what from Hank, yeah, totally. And I think this is an area that the business analyst is often underutilized. Getting that what. We often think about the requirements, but not the solution from Jeff. And yeah, totally agree with that. But we can look at actually how we can extend that role beyond that. And it may not necessarily be about defining the solution, but at least very much so finding that the solution does exist. Or at least validating that solution. Loving this one from Colsum, project optimization. Yeah, I totally agree, because thinking about how can we make this the best solution that we have. Business process map, requirements, again, seeing requirements lots here from multiple people. Attempt to put the project scope, put in writing the project scope from Nancy, totally agree. And really all about requirements gathering. So I love. There, we're back. Sorry about that. Just running into a little bit of a technical issue. Sorry, I know I just had to do a little thing here. Understanding the definition of why. Oh, geez. Understanding the definition of why and doing that test planning. Understanding that definition of what and how to do the continuous improvement from Wendy. And I think this is an area where we tend to potentially miss a little bit with our business analyst opportunities to be able to bring them into the fold and leverage them a little bit more. Okay, so lots of good stuff here, and seeing lots of similar messaging. Okay. And let me just bring that back on. So at this point, I was going to very happily announce our guest speaker, Jason. And unfortunately, we're running into a little bit of a technical difficulty, because Jason signed in early and tested and everything, and he seems to have dropped off, and we kind of are at capacity. So I'm thinking he's desperately trying to connect back in. So we're going to a plan B right now. Just give me a few seconds here. Yep. Okay. So I'm just kind Okay. So just Jessica is frantically searching for Jason. We will find him and get him up here in a few moments. Just to introduce you to him, he is the co-founder and managing partner for programs practices at Achieve Blue. And Achieve Blue is one of our partners. Jason comes to us with 30 plus years of experience, both in the executive and line of business leadership. He's also got a lot of experience around portfolio management, project management, program management, and strategic and tactical business analysis. Did we get in the wrong one? Okay, sorry. Jason comes to us with a lot of engineering and coaching background and organizational culture assessment, etc. And he has also helped found he was one of the founding presidents for the IIBA, which is the it's the international body for business analysts, and it's kind of like the PMI of the business analyst world. So comes to us with a lot of great experience, and normally at this point we'd be welcoming him and seeing his video there, but unfortunately we've got a little bit of a technical issue. So So at this point, I would be turning it over to Jason, but as Jessica continues to try to get him on the line here, so when we look at project management from the business analyst perspective, especially from the SDLC, we're looking at how the product scope drives the project scope. And this is the message that we've been using and leveraging for some time within our work. Figuring out what the product is then drives the project. So we think about, here's our main deliverable, that's going to drive timelines and costs, etc. Now, the SDLC, which is our system development lifecycle, we look at that as our sort of standard way of how we create projects and how we define them. And you'll notice the first one here is the business case. And we just want to really emphasize that the business case is all about bringing value to the organization. That value or the problem, need, opportunity that we're going to solve is really what drives those requirements. And then, of course, we do a selection and design. Out of that, we do the acquisition build. There's quality assurance elements that pop out of that, as well as now bringing us into the solution implementation and then the value fulfillment. So we're really kind of going in that full length between the whole, creating the system and then fulfilling it. Do we have Jason? Oh, there we are. So we're going to do a very high-tech thing right now. We're going to have Jason on speakerphone. So Jason, give us a very short, quick introduction to yourself, because I used your slide to introduce you, and we just finished talking about SDLC. So give us a very quick background on yourself.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today, and thanks for having me. My background, in 1982, I joined a company called Honeywell Information Systems, and my background is software engineering. I was brought into the project management stream fairly quickly, and that's been something that I've really done as a part of my role ever since. Back then, I would have killed for a business analyst because as project managers, we were busy running the project, and there was no such thing at that time as anybody who was called a business analyst. As I went through my career, I got involved in the education division of Honeywell and continued my work in project management. I am now a co-founder and a managing partner at a company called Achieve Blue Corporation, where we focus on organizational culture and then solution development, including PM and BA work. Final thing is I was one of the founding members of the IIBA, the International Institute of Business Analysis, and I was founding president for the Toronto chapter, something that I did for 10 years.
Fantastic. So it sounds like you just have a small bit of experience here in this business analyst stuff.
I can spell it twice.
Okay, so we've already gone through the whole SDLC thing around the the business cases, the value, and how that leads into the requirement, which leads into the design, which leads into the build, and then finally the solution implementation, and that's when we see the value fulfillment. So I'd like to move forward to the next slide when we talk about value delivery. and what kinds of changes are we making, and what are the needs we're trying to satisfy. What are your thoughts around that?
Okay. David, I'm also going to do high tech. I'm going to open up
the slide deck locally?
On my side.
Perfect. We're on slide 11.
Give me 1 minute here.
Certainly. So appreciate you working with us on our very high tech solution to our challenge here. We did do.
We just roll with it, don't we?
Totally. Yeah, and we did do a quick test ahead of time. So we did what we were supposed to do, where we logged in at least a half hour before and did our audio and visual checks and did all of our stuff. And sometimes stuff goes off the rails, and this happens with projects. So we have ways of being creative and just making it work. And when we can get to the solution and we can get to the value benefit, then we've done our job. So I think our little challenge today is a bit of a demonstration of that. So we're still going to make sure we get some value out to our clients. Are you ready?
We're Agile, right?
Yeah. All right. Are you ready, sir?
Okay. So I'm looking at right now, David. What slide are you looking at?
Slide 11.
Second one?
Slide 11. Business analyst perspective: the value delivery.
Value delivery. Okay. So is this with our little robot?
This is with your robot, and it says project management value delivery. What kinds of changes are we making?
Okay. Okay. So having looked at the SDLC and having gone through that, really business analysis gets involved all the way through. So one of the common mistakes that often happens is that people think that, oh, well, let's get the requirements and then we're kind of done with the BA. And that's not really true. In practice, what happens is right from your business case through requirements, selection, acquisition, QA, implementation, all of that is BA work. What does tend to happen is that in a typical waterfall environment, the BA is involved a whole lot at the beginning, then more in a support role in the middle, and then a whole lot at the end again when you get into the QA and user acceptance testing. In Agile, it's all the time, all the way through because of the way that Agile works. Now, getting to this slide, the idea at the top, you can see in the little window, business analysis is really not a project management discipline. It's a product management discipline.
Right.
It deals with understanding the goods and services and solutions from a needs perspective before we go out and do anything. As David said at the beginning, when people do solutioning, very often they jump to an answer before they really understand the problem. And one of the values of business analysis is to say, wait a minute, let's really look at what you need, and then we'll decide what we're going to do about it. But until we understand what you need, you could end up spending money on a solution that's not going to solve your problem. So with regards to what kind of changes are we making, that really has to do with the product scope. So are we talking something that's incremental? Are we talking something that's replacing something that already exists? Are we talking about something that's net new? Are we talking about demising something that exists and we're not quite sure what is going to fill in that gap afterwards? So you need to look at those changes. Are they operational, dealing with the people? Are they tactical, dealing with departmental levels? Or are they strategic, dealing with the entire enterprise? That's going to determine what level of business analysis you need to do first. Also, with regards to changes, you need to think about, are these permanent changes? So with a solution, you have to think about what is the total life cycle of this thing? How long is the solution expected to survive and thrive and help us grow as a business? Is it something that's going to get us through the next strategic cycle, maybe 2-3 years? Mm-hmm. Or is it something more fundamental that's going to cause a disruption to be implemented, or maybe even a merger or acquisition? So that's the first question that comes in. And that's why business analysis always starts at the top of the house.
Right,
dealing with the executives or the sponsors, and then only then goes down into end user requirements and those kinds of things.
Interesting, because I always kind of thought of business analysts really being much more at the tactical level, down at the kind of front users and really understanding what they're looking for. But I think that's a really good perspective to bring it down from the top first.
Mm-hmm. You have to. It's the same thing as in project management. We often think, okay, well, where do I go after I've got this part of my career done, I could get into portfolio management, program management, much higher levels of impact on the organization. And the same thing is true for business analysis. Tactical business analysis at the project level is still very much alive, but enterprise level business analysis has been around for quite some time, and this is something that really is the growth curve for BAs as they become more impactful in the organization.
Interesting. So it could almost be a second career for some project managers who are looking for a change.
For sure. I mean, the thing is that, as I mentioned, because BA is not a project management discipline, it really is a peer discipline to project management in the same way that software engineering is, or quality assurance, or whatever you like. These are peer disciplines. When we're working within a project, absolutely we're working under the coordinated efforts of a PM. But BAs very often and increasingly are involved in between projects. They're embedded in the business.
Right.
And in fact, understanding that a need is arising or has reached a critical mass where a project is needed, we often find that BA is the catalyst for a project.
Yeah, I can see that because it's really kind of where we begin. So I think that really positions us well for moving into slide 12. And if you can just touch briefly on, looking at the 5 areas that we kind of at a high level define a project: initiating, planning, executing, monitor, control, and closing. And we're going to dig into these each in detail, but just give a quick opening on what we can expect from a BA within each of those areas.
Okay, that's great. And I love this slide because this really points out that the PM perspective is different than the BA perspective. The BA perspective is your solution development lifecycle. So when you look at a waterfall project and you look at your classic phases, so you're initiating, you've got your requirements, your design or selection, you've got your acquisition or build, your QA, your implementation and rollout. That is the BA perspective. That is how we think of solutions as they are gestated and brought into existence. Working with the PM perspective here on the basic 5 phases, on initiating, your BA is going to be really involved in helping you build out your business case. So understanding, what is the organization looking for strategically, tactically, operationally. And the idea here is, again, by starting at the top, every level of requirements really drives and constrains every level underneath it. So there's no use in going and talking to users and finding out what they want before you figure out what it is the business is trying to do. If you do it in this manner, going top down, then the conversations you have at the tactical and operational levels make much more sense. Because you can say to the users, within the context of this priority or this strategy, how can we help you?
Yeah, and like you say, putting it into a context so that it's in that bigger picture. And I think that's an area that a lot of PMs miss, because we're so down in the weeds and so in the tactical, we tend to sometimes forget the higher level strategic.
And going back up the chain, the idea is that every level of requirements must support and enable all levels above them. And this is really where your business casing comes in. Because if I'm an executive and I'm looking at, doing something, anything, that may involve satisfying requirements on the business side, so in the real world, process, tools, technologies, those kinds of things, as well as on the IT side, I've got to make sure that I'm getting bang for my buck, and that we're not going to go build a solution that keeps the users happy but doesn't give me any business value. So when the things are coming back up the food chain, a BA will help you make those links by saying things like, by providing this functionality to the users, it supports this tactical direction, and it supports this execution of the strategy. The more links you can make there, the stronger your business case.
So like the traceability matrix, where we're connecting our features to and functions to the requirements, this is really connecting those requirements up to the higher level strategic of the organization.
Right. And when you're talking about that, in BA parlance, we would call that lateral traceability, so that any feature or function must be traced back to its design and traceable back to the requirement that drove it. Here we're talking about vertical traceability so that we can see where the organization is coming from top down and how by satisfying these departmental or operational needs, we are actually making the organization stronger and better positioned for success. So that leads into your planning, same thing. Now, planning is an interesting thing here because when a PM, you're out there and you're working with your subject matter experts on your team to build out a project plan, one of the, of course, key parts of that are the various work plans that each of those specialists then flesh out and elaborate upon. So, with regards to the requirements, your BA is going to elaborate in the requirements area of your project, creating a requirements work plan. The table of contents is going to be exactly the same as your project plan. So it's going to have financials, resources, schedules, work breakdown structures, all of that, but only with regards to managing the requirements. When you give that back to your project manager, that's going to create a much more defensible project plan. Because your PM, if they're challenged, where did you get these estimates on time and money, the PM can now say, well, I got it from the people who do the work.
Mm-hmm. Which is where we should be getting it.
Which makes it more defensible.
Yeah, absolutely. So
the other thing is, as you get to your various milestones or as you get to your various gates, whatever they are, for example, in Agile, you're dealing with backlogs, just like with the PM side of the world, you are looking at your plan versus actuals and making adjustments. Same thing is true here. So if we're talking, for example, waterfall or even iterative, then what you've got is a situation where when you finished your requirements analysis, you had some estimates there. You hit that milestone, you've got your requirements documentation. Mm-hmm. It's signed off. Let's do a reality check. How much did it really cost? How long did it really take? And that's going to help your PM in trend analysis in terms of, are we trending okay, ahead of the curve or behind the curve?
Right, absolutely.
With regards to executing, that's totally up to whatever approach you're taking. As I mentioned in waterfall, one of the things that happens in a lot of BA shops where the discipline is mature, for example, in a lot of the banks, what will happen is the QA function gets front-loaded up with BA right from the beginning. Mm-hmm. The idea being that your QA and your BA are really yin and yang. So as you're getting the requirements, your QA person can really start building out your test beds and test scenarios. And what happens in between, of course, is the build or the acquisition. Because you've got that harmony from the beginning, you're not going to have any surprises. And everybody knows right off the bat how the solution will be vetted against requirements.
Which is I think that's a key pain point for a lot of PMs, because they get to the end of their project, they're trying to transition and close and get that deliverable done, and then that's when those hidden requirements rear their ugly heads, and stakeholders are saying, no, I'm not signing off because it's actually not meeting my needs.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. So fantastic overview. Let's dig into some details. We'll move into slide 13. And here we are in initiating, and from a project management perspective, this is really about defining the why. It's about identifying the stakeholders and the business needs. And as we saw in our first question around, what do you see the PM's role or the BA's role is? There was a lot of define the needs and that sort of thing from our folks. So let's hear from Jason and round out a little bit about what's the business analyst really going to provide as a benefit during that initiating phase.
Mm-hmm. Well, I already talked about, do you even have a business case? Mm-hmm. And one of the techniques that I found very, very helpful and that I teach is your business case is not a single thing. And if you look at your initiation of the project, the reality is the solution or the need or, that's a twinkle in somebody's eye. Mm-hmm. People, executives, sponsors, the business, they're experiencing pain points. They don't know what to do about it, but they realize it's time to do something about it. So what the BA can do here is a couple things. One is, before we go ahead and fund a project, let's find out if we really have a project. So with regards to your business case, very often what happens is you create an initial business case. And all that is, sometimes it's called a feasibility study or an opportunity analysis. You just give me enough time and money and resources to find out if, in fact, we've got something that can really justify a project. If at the end of that, when you've got your requirements, because right now we don't know what the requirements detail is. Once we do that, once we run our requirements, which is getting into blending into the next phase, actually planning, what's happening there is we can say, yes, we do, or no, we don't, or this is how big this thing is. We thought scope was this big, it's actually this much larger. And now the company or the organization has the opportunity to have a milestone gate and to say, what are we going to do here? We can go ahead, we can modify our plan for this, scoping back or scoping up, or we can just kill it, realizing that we don't actually have a business case. The wisdom there is it's better to spend $100 than waste $1,000.
Absolutely, because I mean, the whole purpose of initiating, no matter how you look at it, is about justifying the project and making that key decision, should we move forward or not. Yeah. That's
right. Also with regards to identifying your stakeholders, by having your BA involved right up front, that whole stakeholder analysis can be front-loaded. You can also get into some fairly detailed work in terms of upstream and downstream stakeholders and stakeholder priority, which can free up a lot of conflict when you sometimes have stakeholders who disagree with the direction, or if you have to make tough choices about what will be fulfilled and what might be deferred. By doing all that work up front, it just creates a level of transparency that helps everybody.
Absolutely, and we actually had a question from one of our attendees, which I think is now a really good time to bring this up. This is from David. He says, executive and PM rarely involve the BA and operations in planning until the solution is already decided, and involve BAs only for implementing the plan. Now, a couple people have chimed in saying, well, that's not my experience, but I think what you said here really kind of emphasizes or highlights how we can bring a lot more value to the project and to the whole process of managing our project by engaging that PM a little bit, or the BA early.
You must. Really bringing in the BA only to validate a solution is kind of like the horses have run away, now close the barn door.
Yeah.
What you have to understand here is that, okay, back at Honeywell, what you're describing there, David, what your caller is describing, is what we used to call a ready, fire, aim project.
Yeah, and we see far too many of those, unfortunately. All right, so let's step into planning now. And just before we do that, we're going to ask the question, who defines the business need? So this is our second question for today. So I'm just going to pop open to the question window, and who defines the business need from your experience? Okay, so getting some fast and furious responses here. First one from Lisa, who designs the business need, the product owner. And I have a bit of a concern around that, Lisa, because I want to make sure, like we've been talking about, that we're not having the product drive the project. So when we look at Sukhir Gill says, the business owner, and I've always, we're seeing multiple people saying business owner. I always want to make sure that, we've got a very business focus here. From Ted, the sponsor, totally see that happening a lot. And again, we want to make sure that we're very much embedded in the business. And this is where having PMs and sponsors and key people in the project who are actually coming out of the business can be very, very key. Because the sponsor's true role here is really to fund the project and to authorize it, as opposed to necessarily define the business need. Business owner, seeing lots of business owners from various people, which is great. And it is a bit of a dynamic thing. So we're seeing some people saying, for example, from Hung Ha, product manager, business lead, sponsor, sometimes stakeholders. We're seeing it come from a varied set of people, which I think is probably most people's experience. And this is, I think, where we we look at what the BA can really bring to that for us. So let's step into planning. And from a project management perspective, we're really getting into the what and how of the project. So we figured the why out. Now we got to figure out the what, the solution, and the how. How do we get from A to B? We're getting into the details. We're getting to that rolling wave. Yes, please, absolutely.
In an Agile environment, a business analyst often serves as the product owner.
Okay.
And the idea of that a business analyst is not simply a representative for the user community and the business in general, but also an advocate for them, making sure that that voice is heard. So people often say, well, in an Agile environment, you have BAs. The answer is yes. They will either be explicitly the product owner, and I have worked in that role on behalf of clients. Sometimes that role is called an internal project manager if you're dealing with multiple organizations and a vendor relationship. The other thing is that who defines the business need? That's a very subtle question. As a business executive, most business executives suffer from too much information. And something that I always tell my teams is that I don't need to have all the data, but I do need to know what that data means. What are the implications of that? So, we've got trickle down, but we also have groundswell. If I've got something that is a pain point in my organization, it can arise at the departmental level, at the operational level, on the customer side, or up here, in the executive suite, any of those places. But if it's coming from below, by virtue of the fact that I'm not involved in operations on a minute-to-minute basis, there's a whole lot I have no idea about what really is going on. So I have to be very careful about making executive-level decisions without knowledge. As a business analyst, you can provide huge information for that by filtering that information up from the groundswell, not creating a dumbed-down version for executives, but creating a synthesis about what the business actually needs, where the pain resides, and where you need to act as an organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that description when you say this is not a dumbed-down version, but this is a synthesized version. So we're hitting those key points as to what is needed, while not causing us to go off on tangents that are just not relevant. So, and that's a pretty heavy skill, I would say.
It's never boring.
All right.
It's never boring. I taught a course to, it was a foundation course in business analysis to one of the big telcos. And it was called Business Analysis Foundations for Project Managers. And at the end of the week, I asked the PMs in the room, I said, what's the most important thing you want to do here, or that you've learned here? And one guy said that I never want to be a BA. It's too much work. And I laughed, but it's a pure discipline. I really think they help each other. So on this slide here, I've talked about the idea of the requirements work plan. Detailed requirements analysis and documentation. In an Agile environment, of course, what you're going to be doing, when you get into that discovery phase, you're looking at your backlogs, things are being reprioritized. You're saying, okay, we shipped this part, what's next? So you look at your product backlog and maybe any other levels of backlogs you have, and you say, okay, what's next on our sprint? And at that point, that's where you're going to go deep on the requirements. So up till then, in Agile, as we all know, we're going to kind of keep it light and fluffy because we want to be able to embrace change. When we get to, okay, it's time to do the sprint, or let's get moving on this piece, your BA is going to do a couple of things. One, lead the charge on going deep on those requirements. Be your enforcer on the idea that during a sprint, change requests are either not allowed or highly discouraged.
Right.
And so tracking, stepping back and looking at the entire solution as it is being built out. Because as we know, sometimes the story grows in the telling, especially in Agile. And having that early warning system about changes in the business that might affect backlogs as things come more on stream and you get closer to the execution.
Right.
Because we may find that, instead of going to this thing, that just dropped off the backlog because we've got some sort of disruptor happening in the business. We have to refocus now. So, really the BA is having that headache for the PM.
Gotcha. So, in a lot of ways, having that BA on staff, to coin a term here, is going to extend the capabilities of our BA. Not only just from we're going to have a better delivery here based on a really good, tight, clean understanding of the business and what's needed, but also managing the project as a whole.
Yes, exactly.
Nice.
Exactly. And, the guy who taught me project management, who was head of PM for Honeywell, his name was Jack, I asked him one time, what's the purpose of your project? And he said to make 5 new projects.
Love it.
Because sometimes that happens, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And your BA really is your early warning system, especially if they are embedded in the business.
Yes, and that's going to be key. And I know there's, I look at my success stories from my history, and the ones where I was embedded in the business and I truly understood the business. Those are the ones. They were easy, but they were successful. And when I say easy, I don't mean it wasn't a lot of work. I mean the direction was clear, and I knew where I was going. So I'm going to just move us forward into executing. From the project management perspective, we've figured out what we're doing, initiating. We've made the plan, the details of how we're going to get from A to B. From the PM's world, it's all about work the plan. It's about manage those change requests that you referenced earlier. Looking at it from a more waterfall version, we would be identifying that longer term plan and kind of doing that, and then dealing with the issues as they crop up. So this is an area where I kind of struggle a little bit around, what can the BA provide for us as support, benefit, value add? So what do we have here, Jason?
This really is, your BA is your field marshal on this. So, if you're commanding the field as commanding officer, you're back there like the orchestra conductor, trying to make sure all the moving parts are working well and syncing together. Your BA is right out there in the field and is always focused on the business need and the requirements. So I know when I was in software engineering as a career, as a software engineer, if you don't keep us on a very short leash, we will build stuff that we think is cool, but it might not be what you need.
Yep.
And we might be burning through your budget and creating stuff that is awesome, but does not provide direct business value.
Right.
So your BA is your advocate there, also your devil's advocate to make sure that as requirements are, because they're fluid and sometimes quicksand, this is the person who's going to be, he's got that, all the fingers in the pie on this. So I've got the picture on the whole thing, not just what you're talking about here. When it comes to your change requests, it's very often your BA who's going to be running your impact analysis to figure out what's going to be changed here. Also, your BA is going to, because they know very clearly what has already been built, the BA can really work with your technical people in terms of where regression bugs might happen, because we changed something here, and all of a sudden stuff that used to work doesn't work anymore.
Nice. I think we're getting lots of knowing nods on the other end here. One person actually chimed in and just said "so true" with lots of exclamation marks. We do have a quick question I just want to interject with for clarification. For this presentation, are you using business analyst and business system analyst to mean the same? So are you using those two terms interchangeably?
Okay, whoever asked that question, I want to buy you a beer.
Will.
Or a beverage of choice.
He says thanks.
It's like Baskin Robbins in the real world. Like there's 31 wonderful flavors.
Yes.
Even then, sometimes, you can have two people in two different organizations with the same title, and they do very different things. So as Richard Nixon would have said, let me say this about that. The term business systems analysis came out of the banking and insurance industry, where they often grew their business analysts organically from their technical teams. The idea was, if you're a systems analyst, you're now going to focus more on the requirements versus the design. And in some organizations, it is a hybrid role. So you are expected to kind of be the lead, the project lead, if you will, for the activity that happens not only during the requirements phase, but during the design phase. That's been going on for quite some time. I'd say about 10 years. What's happening now, and I'm very happy to see, is that organizations are realizing that the mandate is too big.
Mm-hmm.
So one of our clients, one of the major banks, they still use the term business systems analyst, but instead of thinking about it as being a hybrid role, or, and I've got a third option here, thinking about, okay, we're going to have a business analyst who only deals with business requirements, so things like process engineering, that kind of stuff in the real world, and a certain subset of those requirements will have impact on the automated systems. We'll call those system requirements, and we'll have another guy or gal called the business systems analyst who will work only on that subset within the larger context of the business requirement. That's one way of looking at it.
Right.
The new way of looking at it is to say, and this is what one of the big telcos is doing, is they've actually created a new role that is kind of above the project. So it's not a question of hierarchy, it's a question of perspective. So above the project manager and all the people who work on the project team, they've got someone called a solutions architect. And the solutions architect or solutions engineer looks at, and here it comes in quotes, business systems.
Mm-hmm.
So how do business systems work alone? How do they interact with each other? How does sales and marketing and finance and HR and IT and all those other boys and girls, how do they interact and work together to create a strategic set of competencies? And they call those things business systems. In some organizations, if you're called a business systems analyst, that's who you are.
Right.
So right now, you've got to, this is where when I'm interviewing people for jobs, I always say, I'm not really crazy about whatever title you have. I want to know what you do.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope I didn't muddy the water too much, but it's a great question.
No, I don't
There's a lot of different options there.
Yeah, I don't think you did, and we'll actually chime back. First of all, he says thanks for the beer, commented on in the early part of what you're describing. This is how we're operating, and Sandra chimed in, and they're operating that way as well. So I think it very much holds true. What I find interesting from my perspective, listening to all of this, is it really almost emphasizes how big of a role that the BA can provide within the managing of the projects, and how much of a contribution they can have. I've always said that I think a good BA is worth their weight in gold, but I'm really, my eyes are being opened a little bit on this session, so I appreciate that. Thank you. That it's actually even bigger than I had first thought, really. What I want to do is move into the monitor and control piece, and I simplify this down to quite simply watch and fix. We need to monitor, watch what's going on in the project, see where things are starting to go off the rails, and then take that action to correct it. So how can we engage our business analysts to assist us in that?
A big part of this is what I mentioned earlier, David, the idea of front-loading your QA, so that your VA and your QA get together right at the beginning of the project, even before anyone does any thought around design or what the ultimate solution might look like. It's the difference between what you need and how you're going to solve it. But as we get closer and closer into determining how we're going to solution this set of requirements, this is where knowing up front, as a project manager, if I know up front the level of rigor, the level of complexity, and just the resources that are going to be required in order to validate the solution that's being built, that's going to really help me when it comes to budgeting and planning and resourcing and scheduling as well. With regards to your positive and negative test suites, proving that the solution doesn't work versus proving it does work. Your QA is going to be very, very comfortable with that language and the idea that, during the development, we want to really think about negative testing a lot, because we want to make sure that we've shaken this solution down and that it can withstand the rigor of us battering it backwards and forwards. Because your BA knows all about the requirements in detail, and really because it's a people role, has a personal relationship as well as a professional relationship with the stakeholders, has visited their departments, knows what it's like to be those users, and is advocating for them. We're going to make sure that the things that are being tested and the prioritization of the test suite match to what people's business reality actually is. So that I'm going to, as a user, I might have a function in a piece of software that I use every 6 months once. I might have other parts of that software that I use 6 times a day. Knowing that from the BA is going to be really helpful for the QA and the PM in making sure that you're aligning the effort and resources on testing with what is most important to the users and to the business.
Fantastic. Now, you've been doing a lot of talk around Agile, and in that last piece we just talked about, you're saying about how important it is to front load the quality assurance piece of this and really front load and really tighten that down at the beginning. From my understanding of Agile, which is relatively limited, I think you can still do that even in the Agile environment, because I think where some people miss on Agile is they use it as an excuse to not figure out what the need is before they kind of dive into the project. Is that a fair assessment, or am I off?
No, I think that's a very fair assessment. I think a lot of people say they're agile when really they're fragile.
We have a new methodology.
And sometimes it's blah, blah, blah agile. They're just talking the talk and they're not walking the walk.
Yeah,
I digress. When it comes to, I totally agree, David. The nice thing about this with agile is your BA, just like, okay, if you're dealing with Scrum as one of your agile techniques, and it is one of the most popular techniques, the relationship between traditional project manager and Scrum Master, they're genetically related, but functionally and operationally there are a lot of differences.
Yeah.
Based on the methodology, based on the approach. Same thing is true with the BA. You are most aligned in an agile environment with the product owner. And so you are going to be working with gradually fleshing out requirements into detail as those backlog items become next in line for fulfillment. Until then, you're going to keep them fluffy, not stuffy, which will allow you to say, if business priorities change and we decide not to implement this feature, for example, maybe we've realized as a business we've kind of blown our budget, and so everything else has to be deferred to next year. Or if we've found that we need to reprioritize work, it's okay, because we haven't, as we would typically do in a waterfall environment, have invested massive amounts of time and effort documenting down to the nth degree. We've kept it light. So now we can go in and work with the QA person and the Scrum Master and the rest of the team to say, now let's dive in. What's going on here? Let's get that done. And after the sprint, we've got something shippable.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to enact some monitor and control here as we've got about 6 minutes left. Let's bring this into closing. Project management perspective, it's all about transitioning that deliverable and the lessons learned. How can BA help us here?
Certainly with regards to the user acceptance testing, because your BA is everybody on your project, your BA is the person that your business community is going to see the most. They're going to be the messenger, they're going to be the advocate, they're going to be the person who communicates back. Because that relationship is there, if your BA has been doing their job well, there is a strong element of trust and transparency. So when it comes to user acceptance testing and business acceptance testing, your BA, is going to work, again, going back to your technical people, your technical lead, your systems analyst, and your QA to say, let's focus on making sure that the user acceptance test suite, the things we're actually going to show to their business, are going to be representative of the things that they do the most and are the highest priority to them. We're going to change our mindset from negative testing to positive testing now. We're going to show that the solution complies with requirements and fulfills requirements. Because your BA has been involved with requirements front and center right from the beginning, if the BA says, This, in my professional opinion, provides a solution for all of your requirements. There's going to be a strong level of trust from the business there. In addition, with regard to any sort of last-minute changes, things that might happen, and that's always the bane of my existence as a PM, this is where the BA can say, okay, if there are last-minute changes, having done the work up front in terms of must-have, should-have, nice-to-have, this is going to help us decide what to do now. Mm-hmm. So if it's a must-have requirement, that means if we don't do this and it's a last-minute change, the project's going to be late, it's going to cost more money, do you really want to do that? If that's true, let's go. However, if it's simply a should-have requirement, which means there will be some pain if we roll this out right now, but it won't kill you, let's talk about a workaround. Mm-hmm. And let's maybe put that into the next release. That's where you're getting your application release management. Same thing with the nice-to-haves. So your BA can be an expediter for project closure, even if there are known problems.
Right.
If you've got a known problem, that's where your warranties come in.
Yep.
And you're working with your PM, you could say, we're making a commitment in the next 30 days to satisfy these known problems, and so we can get a conditional acceptance on the project today.
Right.
The project is closed, and now we work like buddies to get that known problem file fixed.
Beautiful. So what I'm hearing here is because of that longer standing relationship, if we've engaged our BA throughout during that closing, and I love this word advocate, being the BA can become the advocate for the stakeholder, making sure that we get that user acceptance testing going in. And also just kind of reflecting on your thoughts around the whole managing the changes, I think that really does apply even earlier in the project as we go through, because it really helps keep that context to make sure that we're doing this all within our within that mandate of providing some value. And just as we have our last 2 minutes here, just going to finish out. Remember, support your individuals, both from the higher level management as well as the front level users, so that they're being well represented and we're keeping that alignment of our projects back to the business need. It is about creating sustainable projects, and if we're not delivering projects that add to the business, the strategic abilities of the business to attain those higher level goals, we're not providing value, and that's not going to be sustainable in the longer run. And as I think we've very clearly seen today, and thank you again, Jason, for spending the time with us, you put the PM together with the BA, and you're going to get a lot better opportunities of success. So to just put this in our context of our opening thought, if you got an hour to solve a problem, spend 55 minutes thinking about what the problem is, and then 5 minutes about the solution. If we really, really clearly define what that problem is, the solution is often almost self-evident. So again, Jason, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for providing us, or putting up with us, providing us your patience and putting up with us as we struggle through our clarification, or our technical issues here. Any parting thoughts, Jason, as we sign off?
I'm a big fan of Albert Einstein, and a couple of the things that Albert said. One was, questions are superior to answers.
Nice.
And his other famous quote that I love as a BA is, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a better result.
Love those two quotes. Those are awesome. I use them all the time. Thank you so much for everyone online who joined us today. Thank you. We had a capacity crowd. Next session we're going to be doing is May 12th, and it's project management and strategic. So we're really going to build on the conversation that we had today and look at it from a bit more of a strategic level. And we're going to take a look from the other side. So we've got what's the viewpoint from the strategic planning side of project management and how that can fit in and support. So thanks everyone. You got my emails there. You've also got Jason's there, qquestor@achieveblue.com. Contact either of us if you have any more questions, and we'll see you next month.